So let's go back. You said you were on the track of explaining a process. You said a JSA, a job safety
Analysis, job hazard analysis. They have different names.
Sure.
But
so that's the first thing you're going to do when you get on a job site?
That's
or before you even get to the job site?
Ideally, no. Well, when you get there to the job site and you're looking over the job, fill out a JSA about the job you're getting ready to do. Even if you do the same job every day.
Yeah.
What causes most accidents out there?
Probably falls.
Lack of awareness.
Well, complacency.
Oh, okay.
I do this job day in, day out, you know, and so you have to be disciplined even when you do a JSA. If you're doing the same job you do every day, you have to be disciplined not to skip over something. But if it's a job you don't do every day, they're really important. It really helps you identify the hazards. What are the hazards, and how can we mitigate those hazards?
Can you give us some examples of hazards? Because I think, I mean, I know the obvious ones, like the equipment could fall on top of you and you could die, you know, but what are some of the smaller ones that people don't even, you know, think about?
Well, one of the biggest things is energy isolation, hazardous energy isolation. We call it lockout, tagout, but there's all different types of hazardous energy out there that can get loose and cause us injury, harm, or death. And so we have to understand how to isolate the piece of equipment, and then we have to dissipate that hazardous energy. Most commonly, we think about electricity, right? But there's also thermal, there's also hydraulic. Thermal, temperature, cold or hot, hydraulic, fluid under pressure, pneumatic, air under pressure. Those are the hazards that are out there. Some pieces of equipment may have more than one of those, right? So in that JSA, I have electric driver here. I've got a motor driving this thing. So I have electricity. Then if I shut this pump down and it's full of something that's flammable and toxic, I have that hazard to deal with. If it's hot or if it's cold, I have to deal with that. Hazards that you need to think about also, pinch points. If you're going to be twisting a valve, if you're going to be using a wrench, pinch points, those things that get your hands. If you reach around blind with your hand, that's where you can't see really where you are. What is back there? What am I going to do? How am I going to do that safely? Because a lot of times we'll put ourselves right in the line of fire and have an injury. But other hazards, again, thermal, especially with the wintertime coming on, the cold is going to be a big issue. Winter safety is always a good thing to talk about, but what does metal do when it gets down freezing and stuff? It gets really cold, and you can actually, you know, grab hold of something, be stuck to it, that sort of thing. So if there's any moisture at all, you know, so things to think about. So
there's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot of hazards, and that's why if we, as a group, if us three were going to do a job, we sit here and talk about it. We fill out that JSA, identify the hazards and what we're going to do to
So you have a
protect ourselves.
JSA form that has a lot of questions on it and check boxes to remind you what to look at.
You bet.
Yeah.
And,
So that's part of the process.
and you can get those forms online anywhere. Just Google JSA form and boom, there you go. Again, why reinvent the wheel?
Right.
I think the key thing with that JSA is the awareness piece.
It is.
I think when you're, I mean, especially if you're doing the same job every day, you know what's going on that form.
Yep.
But just to take a moment and be aware of it. I mean, it's just like anything in life. If you want to know where you're going, you've got to have a goal. And if you're aware of that goal, you're more likely to reach it.
Yep.
If our goal is safety and we're aware of what the hazards are and how we can safely get to the end goal, then we're going to be better about it. So I really like that idea. And honestly, it's a good idea in practice for not just construction, but anything you go on in life.
Anything, even in, like you said, in life. You know, if you're getting ready to drive somewhere, should you do an inspection on your car, on your vehicle? Should you check the air? Should you make sure you got gas, that sort of thing, and then check, you know, the direction we're going. Do we have construction on Interstate 35 only from start to finish? It's all so.
I do all those things before I go anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I don't.
My father-in-law says never get a major repair on your car before a road trip. They might mess it up.
That's where they need the wrench in.
That might
there.
that might be where you have the problem. Drive around town a little bit first.
But it, you know, everything you do, and one thing I like to stress too, and I do to everybody when I do training, all these things we talk about, you can take home and use them as well. Ladder safety, hearing protection, eye protection, that sort of thing. You can use them at home and should use them at home as well.
Yeah. So once you have this JSA in place, what are some of the other safety procedures that you can go through?
Well, with the JSA, hopefully you're going to cover everything
Right.
for that particular job. And if you're working for someone, if you're a contractor for someone, you need to be aware of what they require. What do they expect? What are their expectations? And make sure that you meet those too. If your procedures, if your written formats are above and beyond what they have, that's fine, but you can't do anything less than what they have, what they require. So you need to really understand and be aware of what they require as well. That's very important.
Yeah.
Because you don't want them to come by and say, hey, why aren't you wearing a fall protection, your harness and your, well, I'm only 4 feet off the ground. Well, we require you to have that at 4 feet, so you need to do that. Oh, okay. So things like that, little things like that can creep up, but understand what's expected of you. So that's.
So you fill out the JSA. You're doing the job. Were there like checkpoints that you know go around and do safety checks or anything like that need to be in place?
There may be.
Okay.
That could happen that way, but most commonly we've discussed and identified, if we're going to get a piece of equipment ready, this is what we're going to do. We're going to shut down the electricity part of it. We're going to trip a breaker over here. Okay, and we'll go look at it while we're doing the JSA. And then we're going to isolate the pump. We're going to shut the suction and the discharge, and we'll point those out.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a discussion, and then we'll start the job. And if we have to, we can always reference it because we're going to have it right there with us as well.
And then post job, are you filling out any forms like, hey, we met all the measures, or no?
Typically
unless there's an
not.
accident.
Typically not, but now if you have a procedure, there's usually a how to bring something down and a procedure how to take it up. I'm not saying you have to everywhere. I'm just a procedure guy. I know how that works. But if you have the JSA, just reverse what you're doing. You know? We've identified these hazards. We knew we had to shut the pump down. We knew we had to isolate it. Now that we're done, if we're going to be the ones doing it, we'll just go the reverse of that.
Gotcha.
And it's good, again, to talk about how are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? You can't communicate enough when you start doing this stuff.
Yeah. I would love to hear some examples of, man, I think a lot of people don't know how important safety is in the day-to-day of their role. They understand that, yes, safety is important, but they don't understand how things can go wrong really fast all the time, especially in their role. So I'd love to hear some examples of maybe sometimes things just went wrong for a company, and maybe that was the catalyst for them bringing you in to start implementing a procedure or a program for safety.
I'll go over one most recent, and it's not a bad situation. Nobody was hurt or anything, but it was a situation where a company here locally was audited by the Department of Environmental Quality, ODEQ. Okay, and they had some findings, and the company was very nervous. We thought we were doing good, and we need some help here. So I went in and helped them out for some environmental issues, some training that they were laxed on, and we got that done, plus the other things that they gathered that were required. And in about a 6-week period, we sent all the stuff into ODEQ, and they got back a clean bill of health. So everything went well there. So, but they were really nervous. But if you get the help you need in those situations, typically based on what the findings were, you can work them out, because they'll work with you. And if you put the effort out, they're gonna work with you. That's just an example of what happened here recently.
Gotcha.
Things that went there's there was an incident on a location, an oil well location, where two companies that I trained for both of them, one of them was lifting a piece of equipment with a crane. The other company, one of the guys was wanting to help them. They didn't ask him for the help.
Steady it or something.
Huh?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So, and he was there to do another job. This is company A, this is company B. Company A is lifting this pumping unit, piece of a pumping unit, big iron beam. The guy from company B comes over, tries to help him. He gets pinched in between that beam and the ground and causes some injury to the pelvic area in his leg and stuff. And so that kind of thing, you know, shouldn't happen.
Mhm.
You know, everybody, unless somebody asks you to help them, don't go help them,
Yeah.
because that's not your specialty. That's not your
Mhm.
forte.
You're not trained in it.
And so I did incident investigation on that, and of course, and I trained for both these companies. They didn't know that at the time,
Yeah.
and but this company was at fault. He should have never
Walked over to
gone.
help, and he thought he was
Yeah.
doing something good.
Right, he did, and that was his whole intention anyway. And it wasn't to speed things up. He was just thought they needed some help, but they didn't. They knew what they were doing, and so with that, we had to train those folks.
To stay on the job
Stay
site.
on your job.
Yeah.
Do what you do. That sort of thing. That's another small example of what can happen and how fast it can happen. I mean, he went over there and talking to folks. Within 3 or 4 seconds, he was hurt.
Wow.
Just that quick.